Hey guys, and welcome back. I have been gone. I've been real gone from my YouTube channel. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. But I did want to start off with I'm happy that you're here. Happy February, happy Valentine's Day month, happy Black History Month. I'm showing up in my pink. I am black. I am the most festive person on this space. I'm so ready. I love February. It's one of my favorite months, filled with some of my most favorite events. I love the culture around Black History Month. I love the excitement. I also love Valentine's Day. I love that everything's pink. I love that there's like giant teddy bears everywhere. I love people watching and seeing them on their like little Valentine's dates. So you're joining me on one of my favorite months ever. That being said, I just wanted to come here and actually just talk to you guys about what I read last month. This is a little January wrap up with a mix of some Valentine's Day recommendations. I only read 2 books in January, but I am so happy with the 2 books that I did read that I didn't really want any other books to kind of run into them. I found that was something that happened in 2022, is that I would read one book after the other, and sometimes I didn't really give books room to breathe or marinate in my head. So I'm really happy with these 2 books, but then I also have like a few just like reads for Valentine's Day. If you're staying in, you don't have plans like me. My sister got herself a boyfriend, lover, whatever the fuck you want to call it. She's dating somebody. So she has plans for Valentine's Day. So that leaves me a little lonely. But I'm still planning to do something fun, starting with some really good reads that I'll recommend to you. But let's move on from that. Let's start talking about what I read in January. So in January, my main goal for this year was to actually not read any romance at all. Luckily, there was still touches of dating drama in each of these reads. I do like romance, but I just didn't want to get stuck in the same cycle that I was in 2022, where I was only reading things that were like super sexy and super spicy. Just like coming off of Book Talk, I feel like a lot of the book recommendations were all about spice and sex and the sex scenes, and not necessarily about the plot. So I went in the complete opposite direction, and I decided that I was not going to read any romance for 2023. And spoiler alert, I already ruined that, but it's okay. I went most of January not reading any romance, and I feel like it was actually really good for my soul. But anyway, the first book that I read, and I'm so obsessed. I am so obsessed with this book. The first book that I read this year was Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I actually have a full review of Legendborn on my podcast, Oh That Girl Reads, and if you haven't listened to it yet, I invite you to go listen to it. But I really loved Legendborn. It follows 16-year-old Bree Matthews as she kind of starts to unravel these secrets about her mother in this new college program at UNC Chapel Hill. Yes, I always forget the college. But she kind of discovers her own powers through this society of, what are they called? Legendborn. And it's just so good. It's like a cool magic system. I really like this whole retelling of like the King Arthur myths and legends and stories, and the way it's tied in with Black history is actually such an amazing job. And I love that this book explores generational trauma as well as grief, and the way it's done was so surprising, and I didn't expect to feel so seen and heard in terms of certain things around like being a Black woman who might not know much about the other Black women in her lineage. And that has been a big deal to me. If you guys seen my review of Black Cake, that was another book that kind of hit me in the feels in terms of like that I don't know what to call it. I want to say the generational missing person report. Like, you just don't really know who you are until you know, like, the women in your family. And I feel like this book really explores that in such an interesting fashion. So if you haven't read Legendborn already, read it. There's another book out called Bloodmark, and I'm going to be starting that soon, but I love this series so much that I'm actually avoiding reading the second book. I know that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't, but that's just how I am. So the second book that I actually picked up in January is a part of a book club. It's by a TikTok creator. She is another lovely Black woman. I will actually leave her TikTok up here. But it is Women Against versus the Void. Yeah, Women versus the Void. It's an 18 plus group, so a lot of the books that we're reading aren't going to be like young adult literature. It'll contain like a lot of adult content, but it's all basically literary fiction about women. I love literary fiction, and I feel like the book, I recently just joined this group, so I read their January pick with them, and I feel like the book they chose, I would have never chose this by myself, or I don't even think I would have heard of it by myself. And I'm so glad I joined this group. If you're looking for like an online book club or just like a book club in general, definitely check out Women versus the Void. Shout out to Zoe. You're amazing. But the books she chose for January was Post-Traumatic by Chantel V. Johnson. What can I say about this book, you guys? What can I say about this book? Okay, so first of all, we're following a Black female lawyer who lives in New York City, who's dealing with a lot of her own mental health while also advocating for people who have mental health issues within this psychiatric hospital. So she's their defense attorney, and we're kind of following her journey and unraveling her own family systems, her own trauma, her own sexual trauma, familial trauma, and things like that, her trauma with her mother, and seeing how generational trauma kind of gets repeated, even though the people who have experienced trauma are inflicting it. Hold on, I don't know what that thought was. Hold on, let me try that again. We're exploring generational trauma and the cycles of like hurt people. That's how I should say it. But this book was so good to me. There were so many parts of this story that just really stood out to me. Like if you see all my tabs, I don't know if you'll see it, but I just related to her so much. And the interesting thing about, you know, being in a book club while reading this book is that you can kind of see everyone's viewpoints. And to be honest and upfront with you, Vivian, our main character, she sucks. Like, it sucks to be in her head. It is a messy place to be in. It's very fat phobic. She deals with an eating disorder. She deals with certain just like hyper awareness. She's kind of, it's miserable to exist with her. But in the same sense, it's like I am her. I understand her. A lot of the feedback that the group has given about this book is that she is very, very fat phobic. And if you are sensitive to fat phobia, as well as, you know, talks about eating disorders, this one is definitely not going to be for you. You have to be really prepared to go into this book, so please, please, please check the trigger warnings. I want to make sure to give you guys a heads up. These are trigger warnings provided by Storygraph. For graphic, there is graphic mention of eating disorders, forced institutionalization, and fat phobia. For moderate, there is child abuse, domestic abuse, and rape. And for minor, there is sexual assault and police brutality. That covers about most of it. Just make sure to do a little bit of extra research as well. Surprisingly, with the discussions, because I'm really sensitive about discussions around sexual trauma, surprisingly, that didn't bother me as much as her hyper awareness, because I relate to that on another level, and that's something that I'm presently just working through. Whereas like in terms of like my personal sexual trauma, I've had time to kind of, you know, pace myself. What really helped for me in reading this book was actually pacing myself. I only read maybe one chapter a night, and before I read a chapter of this book, I did a self-check-in, and I did a self-check-in after reading each chapter. It was pretty easy to breeze through, but again, with the content, you're gonna have to take it slow. I did take about maybe a week and a half to read this. I think there's only about 13 or 14 chapters in this book. But I highly recommend it if literary fiction is your thing, if this sounds like something that you're interested in, and I also highly recommend joining the book club Women versus the Void. I need water. I'm like looking at my toes right now and I really need to get them done. It's horrendous. So now we're just gonna rapid fire some suggestions, okay? Here are 2 books that I want to read in February. One of them I technically already read and I kind of breezed through it, but that is Final Offer by Lauren Asher. I sprinted to the bookstore when I saw this was coming out. I actually kind of forgot that this was coming out this year, and oh my god, I'm out of breath. Hold on. So I actually forgot this was coming out this year, and I put myself on that obvious romance book buying band, and I quickly broke it once I figured out that this was coming out. Okay, personally, I did not like Declan's story, and personally, I did not like Rowan's story. I don't know why I kept on sticking around for this series, but I actually really liked Cal's story. I think it was a little watered down, to be honest, in terms of the struggles that he goes through, and I think the resolution was kind of simple, but I still enjoyed it. I still feel like it touched on a lot of topics surrounding like alcoholism and what it means to move forward with a person when you're re-entering their lives. So it's a nice second chance romance. You get the conclusion of the story. If you read the other 2 books, I mean, I think it's definitely worth it to make it to the 3rd book. I'm surprised I made it to the 3rd book. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to read this. But then I got really excited because another book talker, book creator, I will put her stuff right here. She actually was talking about it and she was so excited, and I love hearing her talk about books, and so her excitement made me excited. So I picked it up. I decided to finish the series, and it was well worth it. I actually loved Cal's story a lot more than the other brothers. Again, a lot more flushed out, a lot more just, it's thick. She's thick too, but I think compared to the other books, you kind of needed a lot more space to kind of have his story and also wrap up the series. Unlike the other books, I feel like with the other books you could read them out of order, and I actually think I did read them out of order, but with this one, it's definitely the 3rd installment, and you definitely have to read this last. Okay, this next book I'm so excited about, and I've realized while actually looking at my book pile is that my reads aren't that diverse. So a lot of the books that, hold on, let me focus. So fun fact about me is that when I'm recording, I get so ahead of myself in terms of like where my thoughts are going, and I feel like I can't organize them. So you think I would make a script, but that's not me. But a book that I picked up along with Final Offer, another book that broke my ban, is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I'm actually surprised this wasn't the book to break my ban, because every time someone talked about it, I was like, I need to go get it now. I need to go get it right now. But I was so determined. I was so determined not to. But I'm surprised this didn't break it. This is a YA romance. I actually have no idea what this is about. I just saw Talia Hibbert and was like, I need to read this. So we're gonna read this together. Bradley is pretty much perfect. He's a star football player, manages his OCD well. I also have OCD. Oh wow, I'm excited about this. Okay, sorry. And comes out on top in all of his classes except the ones he shares with Celine. They used to be best friends until Brad decided he was too cool for conspiracy theory-based Celine and literally abandoned her for the popular kids table. So when Celine signs up for a 2-part survival course in the woods, she definitely doesn't expect to find Brad right beside her. Forced to work together for the chance to win the grand prize, Celine and Bradley must trudge through not just mud and dirt, but their messy past. As this adventure brings them closer, they start to remember all the good parts of their history. But has too much time passed, or just enough to spark a whole new kind of friendship? This sounds cute as fuck! Oh my god, I'm so excited. And look, it matches my outfit. Yes, it matches my outfit. Okay, I'm so excited. I actually have another Talia Hibbert book on my recommendation for you guys, but I loved her writing. I actually think when I was in my reading slump of 2021, it was Talia Hibbert who kind of got me out of it. I read The Princess Trap and then the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is super popular amongst everyone. And I'm just really excited for this. I love the way she brings forth like different disorders and mental health things that come up. I mean, recently for me, like my OCD has been triggered a lot, and it's something that like me and my psychiatrist have been talking about for a little bit in terms of like, what's up with Bria type thing. But I actually haven't seen many books that talk about OCD, but I do love how she handled like talks about like autism and other like mental health issues like depression and anxiety in her other books. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how she approaches this. So now into my actual suggestions for your Valentine's Day reading. We're gonna start off with nonfiction because I only have one nonfiction book. And technically I have a story for you about this, but it is All About Love by Bell Hooks. If you're on TikTok, if you heard of that girl, you've heard of this book. I started reading this actually in 2021 when I was living in my apartment dating that douchebag. Oh, sorry. I read this book while I was dating that person, and I kind of want to try to pick it up again and get a new copy because I feel like this one holds too much trauma. And I even annotated in here, and oh baby, the thoughts that I was having was not good. And I can't read this, but a lot of people from what I did read, I feel like it really did open up conversations about how we do love and how we view relationships, especially romantic ones. What I'm kind of interested about in terms of reading this book again, I'm interested in hearing about this section that I hear a lot of other Black women talking about, where we specifically dehumanize men in romantic relationships in terms of like their feelings. I'm kind of paraphrasing what I've heard other women say, but I'm kind of really curious about that in the part of the book. So I plan on actually picking this one up again this month in February, but I'm getting a new copy first because there's just, I can't, it's weird. I love annotating, but if I'm in a certain headspace and I remember that headspace, I can't pick it up again. And just some of the things that I wrote in the margins kind of hurt me a little bit. It kind of makes me cry. Yes, but I really actually do recommend this. Like even the first few chapters were impactful to me, and I remember feeling deeply impacted by them. So yes, I definitely recommend this. I actually lied. I have 2 nonfiction books for you. Hold on. Another sprint across the house. Okay, so I totally lied to you. I have another nonfiction recommendation. I'm in the middle of reading this one. I'm kind of taking it chapter by chapter, activity by activity, but it is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Another book that like everyone was talking about, but this has helped me so much in terms of like my sexuality, trying to figure out like certain responses and desires that I've had, a lack of response and desires that I've had. And I guess like, if anything, because I'm now at this point where she's talking about like how there's certain takeaways that you can take from anything that you digest in terms of media, and it's okay, and it's not like wrong for you to do that. It's not wrong for you to cherry pick in terms of like topics like this. But one of my main takeaways from this is basically discovering that mind-body connection when it comes to sexuality. I've realized that sometimes, like, my mind, if I'm feeling like not safe or not secure, then it's like I'm going to use sex in order to like deeply connect with someone. But that's not necessarily like what my body physically desires. And then sometimes, like, if my body is like wanting sex and my mind's not there, then that doesn't mean that I need to force myself to be sexual. And I think that's just like so amazing, and just like the thought that like, okay, like for me personally, when my mind and my body are connected, I feel safe having sexual experiences. And it's like less about like the enjoyment for me, but more about the safety, you know what I'm saying? Because if I have the safety, then I can have the enjoyment. So I don't know, this is like such, I definitely recommend this to every person who enjoys sex. And even if you are like an asexual person, this actually might help as well. I do think there was a note in the foreword of this book about asexuality. I don't quite remember what it is. But if you're able to kind of get your hands on this book and maybe skim the foreword in it and see how you personally feel about it, I think that would be really helpful. But this is also another nonfiction read that I suggest you read for Valentine's Day. I'm gonna be so real with you guys in terms of some of these suggestions, okay? I'm gonna give you a range, okay? I'm gonna give you a range. I'm gonna give you a range of like, yes, this is so mind-numbing. Like, it is so not serious. It is low stake and it's not that serious. And then it goes to okay, there's a little bit more emotional things that I have to mentally hurdle through in order to read this, but it's still romance and it's still light. First one, and I know it's kind of, is it controversial? I don't know. I really enjoyed this book, but it is The Love Hypothesis by, what's her name? Ali Hazelwood. I read another like short story by Ali Hazelwood, and you know what I realized about her work is the fact that it's supposed to just be a vibe, you know? Like, it's like some writers write for the enjoyment of their audience, and this is it. I really think this was kind of a cute story. It's based off of a Kylo Ren fan fiction, so it kind of gives you the idea of how like quick-paced it is as well. So this is something that you could easily finish in a day if you wanted to, but still kind of go on like a cute little love adventure. People describe this as like enemies to lovers. When I first heard about this book, I would say misunderstood interaction to lovers. But it's also kind of like I think this was also kind of like a relationship of convenience type thing. I haven't read it in a bit, but it was very cute, and I do suggest that you read it. Next up is my queen, Miss Talia Hibbert. Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I only brought down one of these books, but I couldn't find Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and I feel like I've always suggested Act Your Age, but it's because I relate to Act Your Age the most. But anyway, all of the Brown sisters books are so cute and so sweet, and I love that we're following a group of sisters finding love. I mean, we always get the whole billionaire brothers type thing, and why can't we get like affluent sisters, you know? I just adore it. We have a black female lead, we have a little redheaded man. I'm thinking now that I shouldn't have rejected all those redheads, but yes, this is the second one that I really suggest to you. Okay, this one is like a little bit heavier. And this is, for me, this is definitely enemies to lovers. And it is The X Talk by Rachel Solomon. Oh my god, not me remembering her name. Shit. It's The X Talk by Rachel Solomon. I read this when I had COVID, and it was really good. It was really good and entertaining. I like this idea about these people who are really into radio, getting into doing podcasting, and this whole tension and fake relationship dating thing. So it's kind of fun. Fake dating, enemies to lovers, if that's your thing. It's a little bit heavier, Not in terms of content, I feel, but more in terms of just like the writing style. So it's kind of slower paced. You might not get through it in a day. This might be like a 2-dayer if you're gonna read it all the way through, or you might just mosey in and out of this book. It is slower paced, but I did really enjoy it. It was perfect for when I had COVID. This other one, The Kiss Quotient. To be honest, by Helen Hong. To be honest, I'm surprised I'm even recommending this book because I don't particularly like how we have discussions about STIs in this book. I think it's unproductive, but at least they're talking about STIs in a romance book. I don't know if you actually need to talk about STIs in a romance book, but STIs are a part of sex, and so the way that it's kind of talked about in this book, I'm not quite a fan of, but I do like that we're focused on a character who has Asperger's, kind of learn more about this type of neurodivergency, how she handles relationships, and how she's navigating that by hiring a sex worker to help her learn how to have sex. And so watching their relationship build and watching them learn to understand each other was really beautiful. I think the story is actually really, really beautiful, and I really do adore the characters, so that's probably the main reason why I'm recommending this book. Pacing is probably, I wouldn't say it's fast-paced, but it's not so heavy that it's like dragging along. I do recommend this, and it is a cute story. It's not necessarily light to me, but it was enjoyable, and I really did love the characters. Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I love this book. I will say it's a little heavier in terms of pacing. You're not gonna finish it in a day unless you're really determined. Or maybe I just kind of got a little like tired, but I feel like this is like one of those romances that kind of lean more towards literary fiction in some of its approaches and writing style. So I personally felt like I had to take this a little bit slower, but I really did enjoy this book. It's Nora, and I guess the guy's name's Charlie, isn't it? What is his name? Yes, Nora and Charlie. They're both editors. And they both end up in this small town. It's kind of like a small town romance. I honestly don't really remember this book. I remember really enjoying it and it being at my top 5 in terms of romance books in 2022. And I honestly think that it's because it leans more towards like the literary fiction side. I think I was missing more of a plot because I do remember that these characters had a lot of emotional depth, and that their connection was very slow building. And I like the fact that they knew each other before they kind of entered this small town, and they were both kind of like cynical people in the way of like viewing this small town. Nora's sister was really trying to help Nora romanticize this small town so that, you know, she would feel at home or feel more joyous about the small town. However, Nora just wasn't feeling it, and neither was Charlie. Like, they were both like, we love New York, we want to go back there, like, type thing. And I kind of like that about them. I like that they were both, it was more of like a grumpy romance story. And I don't know, they just fit so well together. I felt like their chemistry was right, and I just felt excited when they're both on page with one another. So I definitely suggest Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I'm kind of avoiding reading other Emily Henry stories because I don't want it to affect the way I view Emily Henry as an author because a lot of people haven't liked her other books, but I still might go for it. I might go for it this February. Who knows, since I already broke my fucking no romance book buying shit. Like, damn. Okay, these last 2 books are graphic novels. And one of them is really horny and one of them is semi-horny. But they're both dealing with Persephone and Hades retellings. So let's start with the super horny because this is so horny, but the art style is so cute. And it's called Persephone, Hades Torment by Alison Shaw. It's very short. I read it in a night. If you just want something that just kind of get you like, ooh, just kind of like in the groove, I really recommend this one. It has story to it. The art style is beautiful, you guys. The art is so good in here. But just to kind of give you a little sneak peek about how potentially spicy that is. Like, look at that. And then look at them on the front. The art is so good. So yeah, it's just like a short retelling about Hades and Persephone. You guys know how this story goes. But it does get frisky at the end, so, you know, just something to spice up your day. Okay, so the next one, you probably have heard of it. I'm reading this on Webtoons currently, but I am collecting the hardback books because I just think the art style is so beautiful. But it is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith, another Persephone Hades retelling. This has a lot more depth to the story than the previous one. And I will say that there is some trigger warnings that you need because we talk about, hold on, let's read what Miss Rachel said. Because I feel like, because for me what stands out most is the sexual trauma. But it says, Lore Olympus regularly deals with themes of physical and mental abuse, sexual trauma, and toxic relationships. Some of the interactions in this volume may be distressing to some readers. Please exercise discretion and seek out the support of others if you require it. So this might not be super light. I read the warning and I didn't expect myself to be on edge. Like, I was on edge for the first volume, as well as the second volume, as well as like in like just keeping up on Webtoons. And I don't know why the trigger warning made me on edge like that, but it was valid because I feel like the art style kind of makes the scenarios really intense for me. I don't know, it was very beautifully done, but it's interesting when you can kind of feel through art how deep those kind of like intense emotions run. And so I will say that it can be kind of heavy, but I really do love the story. I love how Persephone kind of starts to build this worldliness and this confidence in her worldliness. So I think it's great. It's cute. It's also intense, but I think it's well worth it to pick up. I know that there is some, I don't know, I don't keep up on Webtoons controversy as much, but I know in terms of people who feel strongly about Greek mythology or people who practice a certain religion or belief system, that they feel that the portrayal of Persephone and Hades in this story is not the best portrayal, I guess. I don't know where I stand on that yet. I haven't done enough research. I just see people fussing in comments back and forth, and I don't understand the context of it yet to really understand it. But if you have any insight on it and you want to educate me, I'm totally open to it. I just do want to put that out there. I'm not quite sure what they mean because it feels like it based off of like the mythology that I've read, but based off of the contents, the mythology that I've read in like academia, it feels like it all kind of aligns to the mythology except for like certain modern aspects of this specific retelling. To be honest, most of these Greek gods and goddesses do some fucked up stuff. So the fact that they're doing some fucked up stuff in Lore of Olympus isn't surprising to me. But if there's something that I'm missing, of course, I'm always open to being educated about it, and let me know. But you guys, thank you so much. That ends my January reading wrap up as well as my Valentine's Day read suggestions. I hope you guys like this video. I'm glad to be back. I'm hoping to make more videos. This filled me with so much energy I wasn't expecting, so I'm really happy that I uploaded. I will also be uploading another video, or sorry, I will also be uploading another podcast episode on Oh That Girl Reads. It's just a little chatty sit down podcast episode that's coming out the same day that this video is coming out. So I would love if you headed over there to check it out or to share it with anybody. If you like this video, I would love if you shared it with everybody you know. Everybody you know who loves to read. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, thank you again. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I will talk to you guys next time.